seated. Please be seated.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good lunch. Jury manager just informed me that Juror 13, who we spoke to yesterday, has come back. She's supposed to be here at 2, but she came a little bit early. She has had a tooth extraction or something. And so she's not comfortable and her face is swollen. I was thinking perhaps we should go ahead and do her individual questioning and excuse her, and then, you know, depending on where it goes, if we can do everything to do with her, and then she could come back in October. Is there any problem with doing it that way?
My notes are accurate. I believe they are. I don't think we have any individual questions for her, so I don't see any reason why she can't be excused. At least until October.
Yeah, she didn't have media exposure, and she didn't answer yes to one. What says the defense?
Yeah, I think we've asked her everything we need to ask.
Well, let's excuse her till October 3rd at 9 o'clock. Which I thought I told her. Oh, well. And is there any problem with the court administrator handling that?
I have no objection to that.
How about you, Mr. Kilgore?
Tell about Ms. Jacobs.
Ms. Jacobs.
No, ma'am, no problem.
Just tell her to come back October 3rd at 9 a.m. and that we hope she gets better. And let's bring in the other jurors.
All right, for the jury.
Be seated, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good lunch. We're ready to resume the trial case. And you can proceed, Ms. Jones.
Judge, hope you enjoyed your lunch. Juror number 20, we're up to you now. Some background questions. This is a threshold matter. I have down here for the general questions that you asked that you stay at home. Is that correct? Okay. And you have 4 children, is that correct? Okay. And what's the low end and the high end?
I have a stepson that we have had custody of since he was 6. So my second spare mine is 12. My daughter will be 3 on the 25th, and my baby is 3 months.
Okay. Which is why obviously you're staying at home at present, correct? You got a little one.
I did that before.
Sure.
I've lived since we started having children.
Your husband, how long has he worked port security?
We moved back to Brunswick a year ago last month, so he's been doing that probably maybe a year and a half because he started working it all halfway through the year before we moved.
Understood. So you have to educate me here. We have private security, obviously, and then you've got sometimes law enforcement officers provide security, such as in a courthouse like this. You would have sheriff's deputies who are both law enforcement but also performing a security function. Can you explain to me, your husband, is he a law enforcement officer or is he hired by a private security company?
He's private.
Okay. And does he have a particular shift or hours that he works or anything like that?
Because the way that they do the security at the court, it comes to like like a agency.
Okay.
So most of the time he works from 11 at night to 7 in the morning.
I see.
But sometimes they will call and say, hey, can you come to 3 to 11? Or hey, can you go to Walmart and do security tonight?
Okay.
Consistently, and if he's not working at the port, to go do something different.
I see. So primarily he does port security, but he also can do security in other locations too, that maybe is contracted with that agency. It makes sense to me. You indicate that you knew somebody in law enforcement. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Who was it you were thinking of when you were asked that question?
I have 2 friends that I used to be really close with that were just kind of Facebook acquainted now. And they're married and they're local police officers.
Okay. And how do you know them?
I used to work at a bar down in the Rose. I worked there for maybe 8 or 9 years, and they were customers.
Gotcha. What did you do at the bar?
I waited tables and bartended.
That was going to be one of my questions before, making the decision, you and your family, that you would be able to stay home. I want to know a little bit more about your employment history. Anything in addition to working as a server at the bar?
Yeah, when I was in high school, this big church down here on Enslin Street, my mother was the director of the daycare there, and I worked there from the time I was about 15 until I graduated from high school. And then when I graduated, maybe a couple of years after, because I think I turned 21 when I was living in Chicago. I was 19 when I graduated. My uncle and his wife had a baby, and they were having problems finding a nanny, and they knew that I had experience, so they moved me up to Chicago to live with them to take care of their infant, and I was there about a year.
Okay. So you've had some pretty extensive experience in working with children, especially very young children, both personally and professionally. Who is it that you know in the military?
I have a friend that's a Marine.
How close are you to the friend?
We're not as close as we used to be.
All right.
We do catch up from time to time.
I think you indicated that you know somebody who works in the legal profession in some capacity.
Yes, so my uncle that lives in Chicago, the one whose child I always take care of,
Yeah.
He works in like commercial corporate, like litigation, like bankruptcies for big companies. I think when I was there, he was working on Enron, that kind of thing.
Oh, okay. Nothing criminal, though.
No, sir.
Unless it happened to be corporate criminal law.
And I think he did do some like, what do they call it, asylum cases for refugees, but nothing criminal.
And then who do you know that works in the medical industry? The medical profession. It's a pretty broad question.
My mother used to nurse when I was a child. She doesn't do that anymore, but she did when I was young.
Gotcha. I think you indicated as well, sticking on that kind of professional questions that we asked, that you knew somebody that had some sort of psychology background.
Yes, so my aunt, who's married to my uncle, who's the lawyer, is a psychiatrist, but she does family, children, and family psychiatry.
Okay. So child psychiatry.
Yes.
And then the church, I think you probably already answered that question. Do you attend the same church that you grew up working in the daycare or somewhere else?
No, I attend the chapel now.
All right. You indicated, we talked a little bit about messaging and things like that, and you were one of the jurors that had a more limited base when it comes to those technological kind of things, but I think you did indicate that you at least do messaging and texting and things like that. Okay, any of those other social media platforms that we talked about, or mostly texting?
The only ones that I do Facebook, and I do message through Facebook. I do not tweet. I do have Instagram, but I'm not consistent with Instagram. You know, like I'll go back and upload like 10 pictures from a month ago. You know, because I'm like, oh, there it is on my phone. Let me upload these pictures. You know, so
Sure.
It's not something I super keep up with. And some of the other ones I had never heard of.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know some people that, that it's like religiously they got to get on every day. It's almost like
I love my Facebook, though. That's about it.
Okay.
I do love my Facebook. I like to check in and see pictures of everyone's kids and what everyone's doing and that kind of thing.
So one of the questions was, have you ever communicated with somebody that you didn't know through social media or some sort of social media source? And I think you raised your hand on that one.
I did, and I don't know if it counts. But when I was younger, I used to play an online game. Not even a game. I don't know if it's even a game. And then anyway, so you talk to people that you don't know.
Sure.
And then when I was very much younger, when like Yahoo Messenger first came out and the whole like chat room thing was first happening,
yes.
I did spend some time, like we thought that was really cool, that we could talk to people over the world. So I did spend some time, like, because back then they would set up the chat rooms and it was almost like it would be a cafe or this or that, and everyone would kind of play that. I don't know.
No, I totally understand.
It was fun, and so I did that when I was younger, but I don't do the
It was more topical back then. You could find a group that maybe had things in common and stuff like that.
Right.
Okay, I totally understand that. And you did the correct thing. You weren't sure, so definitely raise your hand. We'd rather sort it out here in this context than not get a response at all. So, you did absolutely the right thing. What about posting something online or posting an opinion online? I think that you said something about that.
I'm a little melanated.
Okay.
And it's funny because I've come to really think about that through this process. But I do often, like if I read something, I may share it. Or if I see something, I may say something about it.
Okay.
In that aspect of actually posting something. I lived out in the country for quite some time. We moved out of Brunswick. And so that was kind of my communication. I didn't know anyone out there. And so I guess it's habit now, to kind of update things.
So to kind of educate me about this issue, this topic a little bit, are you talking about like online articles, news articles and things like that you would read, or?
News, it could be sometimes you'll see, stories, someone that did something really good, and it tells that, you can share that, or, maybe something like horrible happened, and you share that, and this is horrible, pray for these people.
Right.
Whatever the case may be, just things that you may see that you may share.
Based on your previous answers, am I to assume that most of this is via Facebook?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I do not want to go to news source sites usually, unless, sometimes you click it, it'll take you to the site.
Correct.
But I don't seek the sites out necessarily.
Gotcha. You also indicate that you've got some legal interests as well. That was a pair of broad questions involving, fiction and reality type legal shows. Can you tell me about that?
When I was younger, I was very interested in what makes people do bad things. And so I would read, I think I've read everything that Anne Rule ever wrote, because it was just very interesting to me, because there's a humanity in people. You know what I mean? And so it was always interesting to me to see, the progression of, how does that work, and what makes that person different? And so that was always really interesting to me. I did read a lot of true crime. I prefer the real side more. I love a good redemption story. I like documentaries and things like that. I do watch Criminal Minds from time to time. I do like that show. And I used to really like Law & Order, the Special Victims Unit, but now that I have children, I can't watch as much.
Yeah.
I have to skip some of it.
You gotta be careful what's on TV sometimes.
Yeah, just for what I can handle.
Sure.
Some things I'm not gonna, you watch TV for entertainment. You don't want to watch something that's gonna make you upset.
Absolutely agree. Some of us in our profession, we go home and you watch Food Network or something like that. You know what I'm saying? You can learn the new cooking tips or something. That's nothing. I'll raise my hand on that one. So I'll admit freely I love to cook. So. Okay, legal documentaries. I think you already covered that a little bit. Are there any particular ones that stand out that you followed?
I really liked watching, even though it's kind of sad. I don't know if you know, Tammy Faye Baker was that her name?
Yeah.
I really enjoyed watching her story because she did have to account for her actions, but she also really learned from what she did, became a better person for it. And so I enjoyed her story.
Okay.
And every now and then on Netflix, they'll get a new documentary. I watched one maybe a month ago about a man that was falsely accused. And,
Do you remember what?
I can't remember the name of it. It was a number. I want to say it was a number.
Okay.
It was kind of a random thing. It wasn't a big part of the documentary. It was a number, I think, the name of it. And he was released. And I enjoyed those stories, too. Because a lot of times these people aren't bitter. They learn something and they come up with a good perspective. So I did watch that recently.
Okay.
Nothing I followed. I told you recently.
The book that you read about a murder trial, you've already identified, I think, some of the things you've been involved in. Anything in addition that pops into your head that you...
I've read Anne Rule, her books. The one she wrote about her relationship with Ted Bundy, I found interesting. Because that's really, really interesting. How could you be friends with her?
Right.
I found that interesting to read. And I did read a book, I read Helter Skelter.
Okay.
I found that interesting too. I think I did read a book about a couple that murdered some people in Canada at one point. I don't have the time to read now as I used to, but I do remember some of those.
Reading becomes sometimes a luxury when you start adding kids to the household. Okay.
Lots of la.
That counts too. Okay, you followed actual trials before too, and I know you've talked about that a little bit. Is there anyone that stands out that you're thinking of?
There's really only the one. I remember, I think it was in high school when the whole O.J. Simpson thing happened.
Yeah.
And we would actually watch it at school some. I did watch some of that.
Yeah, it's kind of the first of its kind where they had that.
Yeah, where it was on TV and you could actually kind of see the process. And the process was what I found really interesting, just kind of watch how things work.
Sure. And of course, being a part of this and watching that, we all realize, well, it's very different than some of these fictional shows. It's not SVU or Law and Order.
Certainly not done in there.
Right. Day 4, I know. Okay, you've been paid to work with kids, and you've already talked about working at the daycare. Anything in addition to that?
I did do...
and of course, the nannying. We've got that too.
I did do just a private nanny at the beginning of this year.
Okay.
For a little while.
You've had a positive experience with law enforcement.
Yes, and I probably should have said anything today. I'll talk about it later, but I hadn't thought about some of this stuff in a really long time.
That's all right. Well, let's start with the positive since that's in my notes, and then we'll come back to the negative too.
When my daughter was small, she was just born, maybe a month old or so, she got a fever. I live out at that time I lived out in Rowan County, and there's nowhere to take her. I had to come to town. It's about 30, 40 minutes. And it just scared me. I was very, when she was first born, worried about her being okay. And I was speeding to get here, and I believe he's a state trooper who stopped me. And I explained to him, I was crying, and I told him, I said, look, I know I'm speeding, you can give me a ticket, whatever, just let me get her to the doctor. And immediately he took my ID and he said, I'm going to follow you there, let's go.
Oh, great.
He immediately understood. And when we got there, he just said, just be careful. You can't get my ID, I made sure I got in the door. And that was it. He didn't give me warning, he wasn't ugly to me, he was very understanding. I could see in his eyes, and then I said, I gotta get to the doctor. He was like, okay, let's go.
Right. Probably a parent himself.
And that has really stuck with me. I really appreciate it. If I could find him and thank him, I would.
Sure.
I really appreciated him.
Okay. And what about your negative experience since you brought that up?
When I was in my early 20s, a group of friends and I went to this invite-only bartender's ball because we were bartenders, we were invited. And I did some drugs back then. Okay. And there was some pot in the car. No, it wasn't mine, but I did smoke it, I'm not going to lie. And we did have open containers. We had drinks. We had a designated driver. None of us were driving the truck. She was sober. But we should have had a different car. Bad decisions. Anyway, we got pulled over on our way back from the bartender's ball. And one of the officers that pulled us over was the aunt of the girl we had driving us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they arrested all of us, but her aunt took her back to job court. So we all went to jail, and she didn't. And I just kind of thought, they don't really know what her involvement, and they charged us all with possession. Because none of us would say, that's our obviously we're not going to be like, so they charged us all, we all got charged, but she, walked away scot-free.
I got you.
You know what I mean? And I just kind of thought, how does that work?
So what happened with the charge?
They were dropped.
Okay. All right. You probably couldn't recreate that circumstance if you wanted to. It just happened to be that the traffic stop was done by the aunt. Is there anything about that situation that would impact your ability to be a fair juror in this case? Okay. And I think you've now answered my next question. Knowing somebody that has been arrested, obviously that would apply to you and your fellow bartenders in the car. Is that what you were thinking about when you raised your hand for that question, or are there other instances?
I was arrested twice.
Okay.
So those are both
You mentioned the one. What's the other one, if you don't mind?
Again, I was in my early 20s. I've changed a lot. I was a little wild, and I moved downtown here with a boyfriend of mine who was a convicted felon, and he got angry with me, and it became physical with me, and threw me out of our apartment. And when he threw me out, he shut my toe in the door.
Okay.
And so I was trying to get him to open the door so I could get my foot out. Also, he had my keys and my phone inside. And I had moved out a couple months before. I was just there like visiting him. And his name was the one on the lease, not mine, even though we had lived together on and off there. He wouldn't open the door so I could get my foot out. He wouldn't let me get my keys. So I broke the glass and I opened the door and I got my stuff.
Okay.
And he called the police and told them that, that I broke the door. And I guess because my name wasn't on the lease, they said that they had to take me to jail. They left him there. But they took me.
I got you.
And locked me up for 48 hours.
Okay.
So that was,
What happened to that case, that charge?
It's really hazy to me, everything that happened, but eventually I gave him the money to go and pay the fine and sign that he wasn't going to press charges, and it was dropped.
Okay, so it was dropped as well.
Yeah.
Was that a misdemeanor offense, do you remember?
They took me in this room with, I don't know, I guess as a judge, I never talked to a lawyer, and they just kind of told me, like, you're going to be on probation, and this is what you're going to do.
All right.
And I went to the probation office and told him, like, I'm going to have this stuff dropped. And that's really all that I remember. Like, I went to the courthouse, and, like, I gave him, because I was just seeing him. And
Right.
that time, like, he was situated, there was, like, a restraining order in place. So I made sure that he got the money, and he went and just signed the paperwork saying he wasn't going to press the charges, and they said they would be dropped if he did that.
What was the length of the probation that you're
I
placed
only
on?
saw him once.
Okay. All right. I'm curious, did you go by a different last name back then?
Stevens was my last name.
Okay.
That was before I was married.
With the...
PH.
And obviously, I'm referring to you by number, and we haven't mentioned your first name, and of course, that's a very common name, so I'll continue to do that so to kind of protect your privacy and anonymity to the degree we're able. So enough on that topic. I want to talk about DFACS investigations. There was a question that was posed about that. Do you recall that question? I wrote it down as question number 66. The question was, have you, family member, friend, ever been investigated, accused, charged, dealing with child abuse, endangerment, neglect, or anything like that? I thought I saw your hand for that one. We were moving so quickly, though. Okay, then I'm going to scratch that from the list. There are several topics involving children that I'm going to save for some private questioning. There was a question about meeting somebody romantically online. Does that apply to you? Can you tell me about that?
I met my ex-fiance online, and I also met my current husband online.
All right. One of those, a dating site or something like that?
No, it was how do you say it? Like how you have people that have the same interests and they're like in a group.
Sure.
It's not necessarily for dating, but you just kind of like meet people.
Okay.
It's kind of like that. Like I wasn't looking for, when I met my husband, I wasn't looking for.
I got you. Just kind of one of those things that happen through your online stuff. And then I know that you regularly transport children, including your own. And then I think you also, to one of the defense's questions, you indicated that you have children that sometimes fall asleep in the car. Is that
My daughter.
your daughter?
And my baby too, actually.
Okay. Just 1 second. I think that's all I have. Thank you, Mike.
Hey, good afternoon. All right, the first thing that I wanted to follow up on was you talked about your husband works at the port security, and the time frame that you gave us was 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Is that every shift?
Most of the time. Every now and then, like I said, they'll call and say, hey, we need you on 3 to 11. Like if it's a day off and someone calls in but his standard shift is 11 to 7.
Okay. And the reason why I'm asking is you obviously are the primary caregiver at home with a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old. If you are selected for this jury, is he going to be able, or do you know if he's going to be able to assure his schedule is such that he can be home while you're here in court?
Thankfully, you know, it's odd how it worked out because I wouldn't even be able to be here had it not. He's also working a daytime job, managing one of the vape shops in town. And about the time I got the summons, they told him that he's closing. And about that same time, they asked him to come full time at the court. He was only working part time. So right now, his days are opened where he can be home with the kids. And also, you know, my grandmother is a very spry lady, and she comes and takes care of my kids for me. Sometimes she likes to do that.
Okay. So you're going to be covered. Your children are going to be covered.
That'll be good.
Okay. All right. You talk about, you may be the first one who has told us that you love your Facebook. I mean, a lot of people love Facebook. So to get an idea of what we're talking about here, you've indicated that you check it daily, but throughout the day.
Yes.
Okay. You check it first thing in the morning?
It just kind of depends on what's going on with the kids, because it's kind of one of those things where it's on my phone. So if I'm busy with the kids, like obviously I'm not on my phone. But, you know, it'll signal me, like if I get a message or if there's something, and then I know, like, okay, well, when I get them in, I'm going to go check that. Most times, like when they're napping or late at night when everyone's asleep and I get like 15 minutes to myself, you know, I'll scroll through.
Okay. And of course, you're dealing with a toddler and a newborn. Okay. So time is a little more precious right now. Fair to say? Time is a little more precious right now.
Oh, yes.
It's a little more difficult to get time for yourself.
Yeah, I want to spend the time with my kids. That's my, you know, enrichment and being with them. You know, I don't want to have my daughter used to seeing my face on my phone.
So do you, to keep up, do you just kind of scroll through to see what's like come up in the last couple of hours? Do you stop and read, or do you save things to read later?
I do both. Okay. A lot of times if there's like a cooking video or something I'm watching, I'll save it. Or an article that's, you know, it kind of is like long that I know I'm going to get interrupted because I don't like to get interrupted in the middle of reading something. You know, I'll save it. And then I just kind of scroll through whatever's on my feed. Or if maybe I haven't seen somebody post something in a long time, I'll go to their page, make sure they're doing okay, or read what's going on with them or whatever. But,
all right, so when somebody posts an article from a periodical or a newspaper, or they post a video, do you, if I hear you correctly, you oftentimes will hit that link, which would then take you to the original source?
Yes, sir.
All right, so you could read the article, look at the video, or whatever?
Yes, sir.
All right, and sometimes you save it to do that later?
Sometimes yes.
Okay, and that's pretty common for you to do?
Yeah, more so with, you know, this say more so with like cooking videos, like stuff like that.
Okay.
Or like DIY, like making things.
Right.
You know, stuff like that.
I get like 5 newspapers that come in through mine, and so throughout the day I can look at the headlines on those newspapers and then go back and read the articles later if I want.
I see news that other people post it, but I don't have a lot of.
That's not your main source of news. All right, so, but you also, you post your own things.
Yes, I do.
And you post photographs?
Yes, sir.
Of your kids?
Yes, sir.
Your family? And do you ever post articles, a link to an article or a link to a video that you've seen somewhere else?
Yes, sir.
Okay. What about responding to articles or posts or things that other people have that show up on your feed?
Yes, sir.
In other words, hitting like.
Yes, sir.
Or hit that little comment that says, that's awesome, move on, look at something else.
Yes, sir.
Hadn't seen you in a long time. Okay. So you have a fairly extensive interaction then. You're not just a fly-by viewer of Facebook.
I would say I was a fly-by.
Okay. You know, a lot of folks, when you go into a restaurant, you'll see the tops of the heads because the phone's on the table and everybody's looking down at the phone and they're not necessarily talking to each other. Has that ever been an issue with you where you're kind of glued to it?
No.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, but I make a little point not to do that.
Yeah, and you almost have to make a point
You do,
to do that. Okay. Do you ever go into restaurants and see that happening?
I do,
Of course.
yeah.
All right. And Instagram is just occasional. That's not a big. That's not.
Yeah, just every now and then.
Okay. And your oldest right now is only 12.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Instagram's going to pick up. I promise. All right. You indicated that as a young person, you also did chat rooms. All right. Whatever happened to those? Do you know? Are they still out there? Okay.
I don't know. I think it kind of, I think maybe they kind of went to a weird place. You know, it wasn't really about like the things that it's about now.
Right. And what you're talking about is where multiple individuals could all be communicating in the application together.
And you have the white part where everybody was like, and then you have your little
Right.
and you inside and it'll pop up and you can see everything.
Right. And what we've asked about, of course, are some applications that involve private communications. And I believe you've indicated that you don't use or have any of those applications.
I do use Facebook Messenger.
Messenger.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the only one. I have used, what's it called?
What's that?
It's an application where, like, if you don't have, and I forgot how to do something, I don't use it anymore. But if you don't have like a cell phone like service, you can text back and forth.
What's that?
No. It's
Well, it's okay.
It wasn't where you could talk to anybody you didn't know. It was
All
like
right.
where you could add people that you know, and it used the Wi-Fi.
Good.
Yeah. Because I didn't have a set up cell phone for a while. I couldn't use the internet.
And you've had some, not only history from dating online, but some success. Okay. And has that been, over the years, kind of one of your primary ways of meeting people and dating?
No, not really. It just kind of, just those couple times.
Okay.
3 times, I think. 3 times I met someone in person that I met online.
All right. Well, your batting average is pretty good then, because you ended up with a fiance and a husband out of it, right?
And they were all 3 really great guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. You've indicated that you watch Law and Order SVU, but that sometimes you can't handle it, and that is because of the subject matter.
Yes. It's not that I couldn't stomach it if I had to watch it, but
Right.
I'm not going to sit down for entertainment and watch something that's going to make me sad or make me cry. That's just not my thing. When I get a minute to myself to do something I want to do, I want to watch something that's like going to make me, something that's going to make me warm fuzzies, not like,
Right.
make me laugh, not something that's going to be like horrendous.
Well, and of course the reason why I'm asking about that is obviously one of the questions that I ask is if you thought you were going to be able to sit and look at images of a dead child. And I believe you raised your hand for that one and indicated that you did not think that you were going to be able to do that. Okay. Okay, Ms. D, I'm going to set that aside for a minute, but I think I may want to come back and follow up with that just a little bit, okay? All right, thank you. Yeah, you've got a lot of interest. I mean, you've got a lot of interesting interests. And I've never really heard it phrased this way before, but you said you've kind of got an interest in why people do things?
Like, I don't know how to, I think sometimes we forget that everyone is human. Like, everyone has humanity. And so I wonder, I see my children, and they're born, and they're perfect, and I wonder what happens, to take someone that is born innocent and good, and then they do really awful. What happens to them? Because I just don't believe you can be sane and do certain things, but yet you're not, like, criminally insane. What makes your mind turn that way? Like, what happens to a person?
The whole psychology of it.
Yeah, are they born that way, or did circumstance cause that? Or I've always found that very, very interesting.
Right. And you've pursued that in the kind of things that you read.
Right.
And the kind of shows that you watch, because you're telling us that you read Ann Rule, you watch Criminal Minds, Tammy Faye Baker story. You said you read about a murder case in Canada. You watched a documentary on shows about someone falsely accused. Did you remember what the name of that was, by any chance?
I think it was a number. It's like 33 or 35. It was a number. Because I remember watching the documentary and wondering, like, where did they get this title? And it was something really minute,
Okay. So was it about someone who had been falsely convicted and released from prison?
Yeah.
Okay. So it wasn't just somebody falsely accused. It was somebody...
Yeah, he spent like 23 years in prison.
Okay. Maybe that was the number, was the years in prison or something.
No,
something
it
like
was. I don't remember.
Okay. But there's nothing in particular. You don't. You don't affirm or subscribe or believe in any of the true crime things you read about. You're just interested in reading about them.
Right. Yeah, it's just an interest.
Okay. You reading anything right now of that nature?
No, sir, I just...
Okay. You got a 3-month-old. That was a dumb question.
Last thing I read was about the girl that was kidnapped and kept in the backyard. I can't remember her name. I just saw
Okay.
her reading things.
All right, and then, excuse me, the two arrests you were telling us about. Seems like you're telling us almost like about another person. That's not you anymore.
I feel like I was.
Okay. You worked in town, you waitressed and tended bar, and the people that you were around, maybe it wasn't necessarily the best judgment to be around those people. Is that a fair statement?
Some of it.
Okay. And what happened was you ended up twice being arrested in your 20s, once in a car, and you feel that it wasn't necessarily that it was unfair that you were arrested, but it was unfair that someone was treated differently because they were doing the same thing you were doing.
Right.
Is that a way to put it?
All gone down together. I wasn't angry with
Well, yeah.
her, like it was good for her, but
Right.
like for the rest of us.
Right. But it stuck with you all these years that there was a different standard there.
Right.
You were treated one way, she was treated another way.
Right.
Okay. Then you told us about, when you were explaining this, was your foot actually like stuck in the door and you couldn't move?
It's one of those, if you drive down through the historic district down here on Union Street, there are a lot of these old historic houses that have apartments in them.
Mm-hmm.
And our apartment was upstairs. And so these doors aren't like regular doors, like these doors. They're those bay doors that open this way. And there was a space kind of under the door. And my toe was caught in it when he slammed the door. And I was bleeding when the police came. I've always found it very interesting. But I guess it was a lot. They explained it to me. They were very nice, but it was a lot of time. I guess they had to take me. So whatever. Because I broke the window.
Well, let me ask you this. Were you living there?
I had been, and we had gotten the apartment together, but the landlord said one of our names could be on the lease, so that if somebody like left, she wouldn't be left like holding the bag.
Right.
She could hold accountable. And I had moved out and moved in maybe once or twice, kind of like we need some space because it was kind of a tumultuous relationship. It wasn't a good decision on my part. I put myself in that situation, and I own it. But so when they came, because my name wasn't on the lease, it was on the mailbox, but it wasn't on the lease.
Okay.
So they had to take me.
So You told them that you lived there and you had stuff there, and
Everything in the house was mine.
and they arrested you
It
anyway.
was mine.
And you told them all that.
I was stopping us, yes.
Okay.
And they were really kind to me, but they just explained that it was the law.
Okay.
What was I to say?
All right. And you classified that as a bad experience.
Getting arrested was a bad experience.
Yeah.
The police weren't open to me. No one was open to me. They were very kind. But I didn't enjoy being arrested or going to jail with them.
That was Glenn County. That was here in Bozeman. Okay. Okay. I think there was one other question that I'd asked you about. Yeah, a couple things. You indicated you had some family, friends, or coworkers who'd had an affair. Who was that you were talking about?
My best friend was cheated on her.
Okay.
And I don't know if it counts, but I did have kind of an emotional affair with my husband some years ago. It was never physical.
Kind of just like an online thing, or someone that you knew in the community?
It wasn't anyone that I knew.
Was it something online? Yeah. Okay. And you said this was a couple years ago. Okay. And turns out it was somebody that you never actually met.
I never had
In person.
intention of.
I could tell by the look on your face, and I'm sorry. I mean, we certainly could talk about it privately if you want, but just sitting here a few feet from you, you appear extremely remorseful. That had a big impact on your life.
It did.
Okay. Does that have anything to do with what you've kind of shared with us, that there's been a big change in your life and you're not exactly the same person you were?
Well, I think when I got pregnant with my first child was really where the turning point was.
Yeah.
I really began to take stock of who and what I was and
Right.
what I needed to do to be mother. But after our son passed away, there was a period of time that was very strange with me and my husband, and he kind of emotionally checked out on me. And what I did was completely wrong. But there were reasons that I went and kind of seeked that out,
Right.
And I didn't think he would be hurt the way that he was. I didn't think he cared anymore. And when I realized how hurt he was, it broke my heart. It hurt me very badly. So,
And that's who you're married to now. Okay. All right. I appreciate you sharing something so intimate. And y'all did some research before purchasing a car seat.
yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
Well, I just wanted to know, you look at the car seats and they'll tell you the safety rating and, how safe it is, like for head impact, and whether you want forward or backward facing and what's the standard and what you should do, that kind of thing.
All right. So that would have been research online.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. You told us that you either yourself or well. Sorry, I've lost my place. Yeah, either you yourself or you knew someone who took affirmative steps to remind themselves that there was a child in the back of the car. And the example we talked about was maybe like leaving a shoe in the back of the car.
Yes.
Who were you thinking about when you answered that question? Okay. And what is it that you do?
I put my purse and a diaper bag in the back seat of the kids.
Okay. in the back where the car seat's located.
Yes, sir.
All right. When did you start doing that?
Actually, when I started hearing about, when my daughter was little, and this was one of the cases, when I started hearing about people, that happening, and then all these psychiatrists and psychologists were coming out saying it can happen to anyone, it can happen to anyone, and it made me so angry because I wanted to say, no, I can't. It terrified me to think that can happen to anyone. And so I really kind of was very afraid. And so I started doing that to kind of ease my own fear that I'd be so tired or something would happen.
Right.
And that was one of the things they said, you can put your shoe back there, or your purse, or the diaper bag, or whatever. And so I just started doing that to kind of calm my own fear.
Okay. So you've been doing it for a while.
Yes, sir.
Couple years.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And to the best of your recollection, had you heard any stories about children forgotten in cars before this one?
No, sir.
Okay. This was like the first one you heard about.
Yeah, I guess maybe I just didn't, because I wasn't, my daughter was little, and so maybe it just stuck out to me more.
Right. Yeah. But you've heard of other stories since then. Okay.
Yes.
Just in the newspaper or the
Every summer.
mostly in the summer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right, Jared, 21. How you doing? I'm doing pretty good. How old are you? 18. Ask you a few questions if I could. You're a veterinary assistant, is that correct? And is that a family business? Okay. Okay. And did you go to school to learn how to do that? Is that something you learned on the job with him?
I'm not currently enrolled in school. I'm still in the process of finishing my bachelor's.
Okay, great. And do you plan to go on to be a full-on vet or a vet tech? What's the goal?
Ultimate goal is DNI.
Okay. All right. And you're single, correct? No spouse. Okay, very good. You know people in law enforcement.
Yes, I have a good friend that I grew up with. He's now a police officer in that for probably a few months.
Oh, that's a relatively new career for him. And this is somebody you went to high school with?
Actually, I met him. His mom was a teacher at the same school that my mom was when we were in elementary school.
Oh, okay.
So I know him.
So you've known him for a long
Not
time.
as close as we were when we were young, but I still know him fairly well.
Is he a police officer locally?
He is.
Okay. And good with the county? County police or county sheriff?
County.
All right. And you also know some people that have some military background?
Yes. Both my grandfathers were Air Force pilots, and my father was 82nd Air Force.
Was your father ever deployed?
He was.
Okay. Where?
Grenada.
Okay. And how long was he in the military? Do you know?
I believe between 6 and 8 years.
Okay.
I don't know for sure.
You know somebody that's got some sort of medical background or medical training, and I guess we could technically qualify what you're doing as being sort of along those lines.
My dad's a veterinarian. My stepmom is a physician's assistant.
Okay.
My uncle is a gastroenterologist, and my grandfather, before he passed, was a gastroenterologist.
So it sounds like you're kind of right in line with the family business, so to speak. You've got a lot of medical background within your family alone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then also sticking with those career kind of questions, there is a question or two that we asked about. Anyone know anyone that's got any psychology training or Yeah, tell me about that.
Well, I'm in no way even close to being qualified, but I'm about 6 credit hours off of a minor in psychology myself.
Okay.
But my parents, specifically my dad, has a couple that him and my stepmom know and they're good friends with, who are both clinical psychologists.
All right.
And I'm fairly close with them too.
So, say that, what was it, your stepdad?
No, this is my actual dad and my stepmother.
Oh, dad and stepmom.
Couple was a friend of friends.
Okay. That's interesting, kind of an interesting background for you then. You know, what is it that interests you in psychology in addition to?
You know, to be honest, it was one of the first, non-math, non-science related courses that I took in high school.
Okay.
Or any level of school that I really, didn't hate, I guess, in the sense of like I actually look forward to going to class and I enjoyed the subject matter.
It's just the subject matter that's interesting to you, but you don't have any.
Just the way that people's minds work.
Sure.
Really,
Bless you.
really fascinating. I considered it a career in it, but I didn't want to.
You're going a different direction now. Okay. And you attend church regularly.
I would not say regularly. My grandfather was a pastor at St. Mark's Episcopal Church, which is just down the road from here. And we went pretty regularly when I was a kid.
I see.
But since he's passed, I personally am not as fond of the new person that's there. He's a great guy. I'm not overly active in church. We do go on major holidays, Christmas, Easter, those sorts of things.
I got you. You don't have that family connection anymore, so it's less motive for you to go every Sunday, where you might see somebody that's actually a relative being the pastor. Social media group of questions that we asked there, and it seems like you were familiar with just about most of the. You obviously a younger guy.
I'm not active in very much social media. I have Snapchat. I had at one time in high school. I had a Facebook page, but I haven't for a long time. I'm familiar with Twitter, Instagram, all those things. Never been a part of it.
Okay, you just know what they were, and so you correctly.
How they work. I know.
Have you ever done anything with Whisper, for example? Because I think you raised your hand for that.
I just want to say that I've heard about that. I think it's like supposedly something where you can be anonymous or something like that. That's about all I know about that. I've heard about it in passing. Like you said, me being younger, you just hear about pretty much anything that's out there.
I'm usually learning about new applications and things from a younger generation. They're telling me about it, and then I'm learning what it is. It's very rarely I'm going to learn something from one of these guys sitting at my table, to be frank. Okay. What about Reddit? Do you get a lot of news from there?
The one thing I know about Reddit is that it's just a great place for information.
Okay.
Really anything. I don't have an account or anything like that, but I know that, it's just one of those places on the internet. A lot of questions and answers about a lot of different things from people who've actually been in these situations.
And what about Craigslist? Have you used that before?
I've sold a couple things on Craigslist. Never bought anything. Not overly active with that.
All right.
But I'm very familiar with the process and how it works.
Along those lines and kind of in that vein, there was a question about ever posting an opinion online or posting something online. Tell me about having done that in the past.
Well, I'm a sports freak, particularly football.
Me too.
I'm a part of various blogs and have been in the past. So I've posted, my opinion concerning those sorts of things.
But mostly sports related, not politics or anything. The college football? Okay, you got a favorite team? All right. All right. You've admitted that you had some legal interests and even followed a docudrama at one point. Can you tell me a little bit about that topic? Okay. Would you watch the whole show?
I did. I found it very interesting. I've loosely followed some other real life cases. I followed some case case recently, of course, the Zillion. Followed some of that. In no way, shape, or form religiously, but I do find it interesting. Of all of those things, I
I know you usually get people watch that and everybody's got a different take on it, and I'll admit fully I've not watched the whole thing. So my question to you is, you know, some people, they watched it and said, I want to learn more about it, and did some kind of independent research to find out, well, is it accurate or is it not accurate? For you, what category did you fall in? Did you just simply watch it, or did you want to go and see?
I watched it, and you know, I enjoy thinking for myself. So I always, you know, kind of reflect on these things myself. But it did, you know, drive a little bit of an interest in me to kind of look up some other background, because anytime you get a perspective,
Right.
you're getting one perspective. You're not getting, you know, both. You're not getting both sides. So it's always interesting to read. You know, well, this was not included in that documentary, or this or this. And you start just seeing, like I said, the different viewpoints. I think it's important to get both sides.
Exactly. Okay. I guess you've answered my question. I wanted to see whether you just kind of lockstep watched that and said, okay, you know, I'm with it, or did you see it as more, I won't say agenda driven, but you know, clearly they wanted people to see the show.
I think anything more is agenda driven.
Okay.
And that's what I think it is so important to think for yourself. You know, like I said, everybody's got an agenda, in my opinion. And rightfully so, coming from different areas, but like I said, I think it's just important. You got to examine the facts.
Right. What book did you read involving a murder trial?
I have actually never read anything, sorry. But I had, you know, growing up, I took trips to Kentucky with my mom, and we would listen to various, now most of these were fiction tales. I have read some online articles and things about famous, you know, murder trials, cases, those sorts of things. Before.
I see.
Not overreacting to that at all, but no, I've listened to a lot of. I've always found those kind of books to be very interesting.
Okay, so long trips and stuff, and books on tape or books on disc, books or recorded books. Sometimes they even get stars to read them. Is that kind of what you're talking about? All right. And who do you know that's a caretaker, or how have you worked as a caretaker?
I'm not really a caretaker.
Okay. I thought I had you down for that answer, but it was kind of hard to see towards the back of the room. You know somebody that's been arrested before?
I do.
Who's that?
That would be something I think I'd like to.
Yeah, that's no problem.
No problem.
I don't have any problem with that. You did the exact right thing. We cover a topic like that. You feel free to stop us, and we'll try to accommodate you. Next question may fall in that category as well. The question was, is there anyone here who believes you know somebody that may have been falsely accused of something?
Yes. It pertains to this.
Same thing. Why don't I hold off on that topic then too, and I'll move on and finish up my other questions, if that's okay with you. All right, giving a statement to law enforcement in the past. You raised your hand for that one.
I've been in 2 wrecks where I had to issue a statement.
Gotcha. Anyone charged in those?
No.
And then you've never transported a child before, is that correct?
No, sir. That is correct.
Okay. And then last thing, I think defense asked you about whether you've ever experienced some sort of personal tragedy in your life, some tragic loss. Did you raise your hand for that question?
One of over 2 years ago, one of my good friends passed away in a tragic accident. He was at a place in Florida, and they were jumping off into a river, and he ended up breaking his leg.
Okay. I'm sorry to hear that. How recently was this? 2 years. Okay. I think that's all that I have for you at this point.
Hey, I heard that you said you were 6 hours shy of having a minor in psychology. Okay. What I did not get was where you had either gone to school or were going to school.
I did about a year and a half of school here.
Okay.
College of Coastal Georgia. And then I did 3 years of school school, and the majority of my psychology studies were at Georgia Southern.
Georgia Southern?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I apologize, I did not catch, if you said this, I didn't catch it. Did you complete your degree, or you finished?
I did not.
Okay,
I have a little over a year's worth of credits.
okay. And the credits that you need, can you get here locally at the college?
I'm going to finish out here.
Okay. And more importantly, are you in school this semester?
I'm not.
Okay. So if psychology was your minor, what's your major?
Biology.
Okay. And do you have some? It was hard for me to hear. You're a little soft spoken. That was kind of blocked off there. I thought you said DNR.
Yes, Department of Natural.
Okay, that's what I thought. What in particular?
You know, I love being outdoors. So anything that can get me outdoors, I love to do water sampling, soil samples, just really anything. The only thing I'm not particularly interested in is the law enforcement side of it.
Okay. Yeah, I've often said any job that requires me to carry a gun is probably not the right job for me. You kind of fall into that category?
I say, look, I just don't, you know, a lot of what they have to do, and I feel like a lot of what police officers have to do is as much about, you know, having to, you have a lot of people who think, oh, I'm not doing anything wrong, and then you have to ask them. I'm not a confrontational person.
Okay. Let me break it to you real easily. Being a lawyer is probably not going to be the best job for you either then. It is. So it's common for folks from the Atlanta area to come down to Jekyll to the turtle exit, to the biology exhibit down there. And of course, this time of year is when the hatchings are going on or whatnot. Have you ever assisted or helped with in those programs?
I have not done something working on becoming a part of it.
Yeah, I would think that the college here probably had a lot of interaction with the turtles.
And I've slowly been meeting people that are making those inroads to get opportunities to see those sorts of things and get some experience.
Yeah. Has your dad pressured you to kind of get into his work to maybe go one step further into vet school? No?
Not at all. He wants me to do what makes me happy and that will allow me to be the best that I can be.
Right. You live in a home now? Okay. You've moved back home after being at Georgia Southern. Is that
Correct.
working out?
It's fine. It's just financially makes more sense.
Oh, yeah. I moved back home after I graduated from Emory, and they were dying for me to move back into the house because I was the only one that could cook. And so they were very disappointed when I had to leave home again. All right. Well, it sounds like you've got a pretty good situation. You're able to work for your dad at the clinic, and that's full time.
Yes.
Okay. So basically, that's what you're doing now until you get back in school. Okay. And I haven't looked up the Daniel clinic yet, but am I correct that we're talking about house pet type animals, dogs and cats? Okay.
Cats and dogs.
Okay. What do you do mostly?
You know, for the most part, you know, my dad, as the veterinarian, needs assistance to go in the room. The whole restraining the animals while he examines me. I do that all day with him, and I do a lot of cleaning.
Yeah. You ever been bitten?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the worst dog you got to deal with?
The worst are usually
Breed.
Chihuahuas and dachshunds.
Really? Dachshunds? Wiener
It's
dogs?
on their terms, and we want to change that up. They don't like that.
Oh man. Well, I've got two Chihuahuas about that big, and they wouldn't bite for
I
anything.
understand why people love them, trust me.
Oh, they're the best. Okay, all right. Let's see. The only other thing really that I guess I want to follow up before we talk to you in private is you did indicate somebody your age that doesn't use a lot of social media is unusual because most people your age use it a lot. But you know about Reddit. And I believe what you said is it's a great place for information.
It is.
How did you find out about that site?
Well, I play video games.
Well, that's nothing to hang your head about.
No, I don't need to hang my head, but I play video games, and it can be a good source for information on those sorts of things. I've also found sports information on there. You know, there's just so many, it's such a large, active community that you can get exposed to good information. I found great, stat sheets for sports. Just various different things. Never actively enough to, like I said, to where I've registered and post or anything like that, but I am familiar with. I look at it as, if I'm looking for information where somebody has some real experience with something, I think, for various things it can be good.
Because individuals are dumping information there.
Right.
Their experiences with fixing something or knowing about something or having done something or been someplace. Okay. You ever watch videos off of Reddit?
No.
But you're aware that they're posted, embedded in that site?
Yeah, I know what you
Okay. I think that's all I need to get from you right now. Thank you. Juror 22.
Background. You're retired and at home, correct? Okay. And then your husband is retired Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so you have to speak up just a little bit for me. You kind of soft-spoken. The follow-up part to that was Homeland Security? Okay. I got you. And how long has he been retired?
3 years.
How long in the military?
I think about 20, 25 years. Did 10 years in the Army, and then the rest reserve. Went to Kuwait.
Okay. And then how long at Homeland Security and for the federal government?
That was probably, I'm not sure, probably 25, 30 years, something like that.
Okay. You indicated that you have some prior experience with management and being able to hire and fire people. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I think it was probably only hiring because I used to work for a personnel department for a bank in Nashville, Tennessee, and with that we interviewed people for hire and went through a certain process with them, and that was what I was referring to. And then that was probably.
How long were you in Nashville? How long were you in Nashville?
I was in Nashville about 4 years.
Okay. Did you have to get up and move a lot because of your husband's work in the military?
Yes. It was primarily the government.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tell me a little bit more about your employment background. What else did you do in addition to the personnel work with the bank?
Mostly a lot of my employment was secretarial.
Okay.
Financial, accounting, school, superintendents. I did work for the government for a while in Washington. We were stationed there.
All right.
But mostly it's all clerical and financial.
Gotcha. You indicated that you know somebody in law enforcement. Can you tell me about that?
In law enforcement?
Mm-hmm.
Well, my husband was.
Sure.
And we met each other. We met each other in Houston, and we both worked for private
security agency there, and then we both went and worked for the police departments in there, and then moved to Gulfport with the kids, and we both worked with the Gulfport Police Department there.
Okay, you worked in the clerical administrative side,
Communications.
and then he worked as a law enforcement officer. All right, and then obviously we've talked a little bit about military background, and I assume you know quite a few people in the military because of your husband's background. Of course, he was in the military. Were there other people you were thinking of when you raised your hand for that as well?
As far as being in the military?
Yeah, knowing people in the military.
Well, my sons, I had a couple sons that were in the Marine Corps. And from there, so we had a troop of military guys that would come and visit with us and stay with us on the weekends in Hampshire and places like that. And my son is still very good friends with most of them. But they most are all right now.
Okay. Tell me about knowing somebody works in the medical profession or having some medical training. Yeah. One of the questions we ask is, hey, does anyone know anyone here that works in the medical profession?
Always know people throughout our lives that have. I used to work in a dialysis unit in And through our lives, we've met a lot of people that were nurses.
Okay.
I do know some ladies that are nurses now, and some that have already retired from nursing.
Okay. All right. So going back to it's that same question. The question was: have you, family, met close, ever had training experience, work? You're dealing with following areas, and there was a whole list of them, and one of them was medical. We just talked about that. The other one was criminology, and I believe you said you know somebody that had some criminology background. Your husband. Does he have a degree? Okay. And similarly, IT, computer programming.
My oldest son he works for Freddie Mac under contract for the, I think he sends the email system there with the inner office.
All right. And then church, I think we asked a question about that as well. You a member of a church or regularly attend?
I am. For probably 25 years I've been a religious education teacher from Virginia, Oklahoma, to here, and also was the director of religious education for a year when I was asked to step in and somebody stepped out, so I did that, and pretty active in our church, and always have been, and still are.
What church is that locally?
St. Williams, St. Simon's.
All right. There was a question, very broad question about being a member of any associations like fraternal organizations, things like that. And I believe you raised your hand for that question.
Yes, I've been a member and on the board for the Council of Catholic Women. It's a national organization. We have a chapter at our church, which I've been on for probably 15 years.
Okay. Go into that series of questions about social media and communicating using social media and messaging and things like that. I believe you indicated that you do some messaging, but it didn't sound like you knew too much about some of those other applications.
No, just Facebook.
All right. You text at all?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
With my kids. Facebook is usually, I have it private, where I have no interaction with any strangers, or I have it posted the settings to where I don't receive anything from anyone that I don't know. And I'll keep it pretty private, so I don't want to interact with anybody.
Sure. So for you, it's more to keep up with family members and friends, close personal friends. Okay. All right, and tell me about your legal interests. There was a topic there where we covered that. So there were a couple questions that were asked about, well, hey, do you like to watch legal TV shows, fiction, nonfiction? And I believe you indicated that you had some sort of legal interest.
Well, I've always liked those shows. I don't always get to watch them. But I've been watching SVU, which I find very interesting.
Okay.
I followed the O.J. Simpson case.
Right, that was my next question.
Yeah, that started it off.
Just the O.J. case or the other trials that you followed?
That one, and then that was when we didn't have a computer at that time, but we watched it on TV. And of course, the Ramsey.
Right.
I try to catch up with it as I can, but that was probably the main one that I really was focused on with the O.J. Simpson. Just at that time, I don't have time to do it too much anymore because my kids were just kind of growing up and I was involved.
Right. You've kind of answered the next question with your response about being a caretaker and ever caring for kids and stuff, and obviously with your own children you were a caretaker at some time. Is there anything outside of that you were thinking about?
Well, just taking care of my dad. Because, I went back to Mississippi State for several weeks to take care of him after he had his tripping like ass. And my mom was coming down with dementia at that time, so I went there to take care of him.
And what about volunteering with kids? Tell me how you've done that in the past.
Well, the majority of my, was being interactive with everything my kids were involved in, which had to do with sports and the church. We volunteered. We coached. We PTSA, on board for that, for schools. I don't know, just a lot of things. We just were interactive with them.
A follow-up to that was, have you ever worked in a capacity where you were paid to care for kids?
Yes, I used to work about 3 years for St. Francis in the Moms Going Out program they have here.
That's one of those programs where you give a mother a few hours and you take care of their child so they can go do errands or you did. Okay. You've talked about having a positive experience with law enforcement. I think that one of your answers is going to be your relationship with your husband. Is there anything else in addition to that you thought of when you were asked the question about having a positive experience with law enforcement?
Well, we've known a lot of law enforcement people. I know how good they really are. And but when I thought about that, I thought about when I was younger. And, being stopped for traffic stops, or a couple in particular, and they were just very nice and very understanding. One in particular was in Nashville. When I got pulled over, I just worked all day and given blood at the bank and picked up my child. He was in the back, and he pulled me over because I had a light out in the back. And I was kind of in an area where I wasn't familiar with, and I got kind of irritated at him, and he said, "I'm going to write you a ticket for that." And I said, "No, I don't feel good. I need to get home." But he kind of gave me the ticket anyway. And I tore it up, and I said, "I'm going to get a payment." And I'm very sorry for that. But he saw it, and he just kind of looked at me and he said, "You have a nice day." And of course, I had the ticket. I went home, and I was thinking about what I had done. And so I called a friend of mine whose brother was a police officer for Nashville PD, and he said, "Bring that. Take care of it for you." And I said, "Please tell him I'm so sorry." And they did. He dismissed it and everything. And I just remember that, and I thought, that puts a positive kind of light in my mind, and it has, for all this time, they are good people. You could have done worse.
You had a reaction, and he did not, and it sounds like. And even felt bad enough that you wanted to make an affirmative step to let him know that you were sorry about that. Okay. Well, that's fair. It's actually, if it's a story that puts a smile on your face, you can call it a positive experience. How about that? Usually. Okay, there was a particular question asked if you know somebody like you, somebody else that felt like they were being treated unfairly within the criminal justice system, and I had you marked down as having a response for that. Can you tell me about that? Of course, let me mark that down. That's good. Not a problem at all. Move on to the next topic, and we can address that in a few moments. There was a question, I don't know if this falls in the category or not, but I trust that you'll tell me. Do you know anyone that's been arrested? It would. Okay, so I'm going to mark that too. There was a question about whether you've ever had to testify in court before, and you indicated that you had. Is that as your capacity as a dispatcher, or?
No, it was actually when our car was broken into, when it was at a gas station being fixed. It was broken into, and there was someone that stole the checks out of our car, and we had to just kind of testify that it wasn't our car and the checks.
I got you. So was there actual a trial for that individual?
No.
Okay.
No, it was just going to court for it, because the person had taken the checks and was using them and passing them off as services rendered for a certain thing.
Gotcha.
So they were caught at the bank.
So you went as a victim of a crime. You were called to court to give some sort of testimony and talk about what had happened to you. That's kind of along the lines of the next question. Have you ever given a statement to law enforcement before? Was that instance?
That was that instance, and there's a lot of things that happen in your lifetime that your house gets broken into. Your house gets broken into, which I did, and you have life stolen, and you have to out for them. I have to have the
Okay.
That was.
There was a question that asked about experience the sudden loss of a child or sudden loss. Again, I believe you raised your hand for that. Not meaning to pry, but we need to delve into that a little bit. Are you comfortable sharing with me that experience? Okay. Can you tell me a little?
Well, I remember I wanted to clarify with you.
Sure.
It says the worship fall into that category.
I remember you raised your hand. Yes. Okay.
I was made.
Okay. All right. I may follow up on that in a little bit. There was a question about knowing anyone that's been a victim of a homicide. Okay. Can you tell me about that?
My ex-husband was.
Okay. And can you tell me a little bit about the when and where?
He was. I was already married to my husband now, but we were in the process of moving from D.C. to Oklahoma City, and got word that when I got back, because we didn't have cell phones during that time, that he was stabbed to death in his mom's kitchen.
Was it a domestic situation? Okay. Was it a break-in, or do you know anything about the circumstances?
I know very little, but I know they found the person who did. And I don't know if it falls into domestic or not, but I think he knew the guy that stabbed him.
I see.
I don't know what. Supposedly, I think it was a jealous deal. I think he may have thought that I don't know. I don't know the details about it.
You're already with your second husband by then. Okay. And then there was a question about experiencing any personal tragedy. I think the defense asked a question about that. Did you raise your hand for that response? Okay. What were you thinking about?
Well, that may have been one of the tragic things.
I see.
Even though you don't, not married to a person, they can still be attached to.
Sure.
There's some.
Sure. Yeah, I don't think we need to go any further into it than that. So, okay. But in the other topic I wanted to talk to you about, you talked about transporting children. I assume you're referring to your own children. Is that correct?
Yes. With having 5 kids, you have to transport them.
Sure. Yeah. What about?
I do that now with my 3-year-old grandson.
And that's what I was going to ask you about, your 3-year-old grandson. When you have to transport him, how is it that you work out the seating arrangements there? Do you get a car seat from them, or do you have one of your own?
No, I have one of my own.
Gotcha.
In the car right now.
Okay. You just leave it in there.
Yeah, I'll probably have to get another one because I just had another child, so we'll have to remedy that pretty soon.
Right. Okay. And how frequently are you transporting the grandkids?
Right now, I guess once or twice a week or whenever we decide to go places, and it's in there, and just in case we want to go pick them up or something.
Sounds like they live close enough to you that you can see them fairly frequently.
Oh, well, we watch the 3-year-old.
Great. Probably huge benefit to them, and you get some benefits from it as well. All right. I don't think I have any other questions for you at this time.
Okay, I'm just going to pick up there where Mr. Evans left off, and you had 5 children, right? And you currently have 3 grandkids, 10, 3, and a newborn, right? Do all the grandkids live here?
Except for the 10-year-old in California.
10-year-olds in California, all right? And so during the day, you're the caregiver for the 3-year-old, right? Which means you keep a car seat in your car, but you're not taking, is that a little boy or a girl? You're not taking him to daycare.
No, I do not take him to daycare. He comes to our house.
All right. So if you have to run any errands or up to the church or dry cleaners or whatever during the day, you just take him with you in the car seat. Okay. So you go with you grocery shopping and all that kind of stuff. All right. Excuse me. All right. So now, is it the same child that has now had a newborn?
And the newborn. I'm sorry, what was that?
You keep a grandchild that's 3. What I'm asking is it the same parents of the
Yes.
3-year-old that's okay. So now are you going to be keeping 2 children during the day when mom and dad are both back at work? Okay. So if that happens anytime soon, you're probably about to move to a second car seat.
Yes, probably.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and what kind of car do you have?
Ford Explorer.
Okay, like an SUV then. All right. You had 2 sons in the Marine Corps. They both still in?
No, they're not.
Okay. All right. You indicated that. The term you used. You said religious. Was it religious education director?
Yes, director of religious education.
All right. I'm assuming then that is through the church. All right. Is that a volunteer position?
That was not. That was a paid position.
Okay. You were on church staff then. Okay. But you don't do that any longer. All right. You also talked about another ministry you're involved in. I had not heard of before. Mother's Morning Out. Is that also at the church?
Yes, at St. Francis Church.
Okay. You attend St. William's, and this is at St. Francis. What exactly is that?
What exactly is it?
That ministry, Mother's Morning Out.
Out. It's parents have the group. The ages are probably about 3 or 4 year old. It's kind of like going and dropping your child off, and from 8 to 12, and do activities for the moms to do. They plan to go out, grocery shop, or do just. And plus, It is that the children used to go into pre-K, kind of gives them parents to
Okay. So it's a Monday through Friday, 8 to 12. Parents can drop the kids off, and it's kind of like that gap year or two before they transition into kindergarten.
Yes.
Okay.
But there's only a certain amount that we would have, and that would be 80. They would have to register within the year, and
Okay. And is it like a daycare where the parents pay a fee and they can bring their child or not?
yes. But they would have to pay for that. If they're registered to pay, they pay each week.
How long have you been doing that?
I did that about 3 years.
Oh,
I
okay.
don't do it now. I did it about 3 years.
Yeah, you had answered a question that your family, you or your spouse had to hire an attorney. Was that for a divorce?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for one, yes.
All right.
The other is what I'd like to speak of.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
But yes, I've had to hire an attorney in my life. I divorced before.
Okay. But that's not what you were thinking when you answered the question. So we'll talk about that. All right. You answered yes to whether or not you knew anyone in your family or close friend or coworker who'd had an affair. Is that someone you could tell us about?
Well, my brother, he had an affair when he was years ago. And I think I was the only one who told about it, but he did.
Okay.
And
Was he married at the time?
yes.
Okay.
And my daughter's husband,
Daughter's husband. Are they still married? Did your brother stay married? Okay, thank you.
Let's take a break. I see smiles. I guess we should take a break. Let's take a 10-minute break. We'll resume at 3. Oh, I'm sorry. That's rough to have all that anticipation, all that adrenaline. Everybody else is smiling. Yeah. Well, I was looking at the lawyers' faces. They went.
Everybody else did too.
All right, we're in recess till 3. Did you think this chair could be taller?
I think it can.